Breaking news, that means our chief reporter, Carve Solocol. What have you got?
Yes, the Spanish Football Federation are considering dismissing Jorge Vilda just 9 days after Spain won the World Cup.
The coach?
Yes, the coach of Spain's women's team could be losing his job. Now, the acting RFEF president, that's the Spanish Football Federation, Pedro Rocha, is expected to make a decision on Vilda's future before tomorrow. Now, you'll remember Vilda was at the extraordinary assembly of the Spanish Federation on Friday when the president, Luis Rubiales, made this very controversial speech, and Vilda was filmed applauding the speech. Now, the day after that speech, Vilda released a statement criticising the president, Luis Rubiales, but he stopped short of demanding his resignation or his dismissal. And interestingly, you see him there in the middle of your picture, during Rubiales' speech, he called out Vilda. He said that he was the best women's coach in the world, and he also offered him, off the cuff, a new 4-year contract worth €500,000 a year. Now, the Spain squad said on Friday night that they would not play for Spain again while Rubiales and the rest of the federation leadership were in place. And also Vilda's own backroom staff, 11 members of them, on Saturday released a statement saying, "We're resigning, we can't take this anymore." And what's extraordinary is that Spain, the world champions, have Nations League games coming up next month against Sweden and Switzerland. At the moment, Vilda is on his own because he's got no players. They're refusing to play for him. He's got no backroom staff. And I think he may also be losing his job in the next 24 hours.
And prior to the World Cup, remember, Spain won the World Cup with a second team because a lot of the players wouldn't play for Vilda and didn't go. All right, so that's the women's coach. What about the men's coach?
Well, again, Luis de la Fuente is somebody who was close to Luis Rubiales. Again, during that speech on Friday, we saw de la Fuente applauding, clapping the president. He came out the following day as well, released a statement criticising the president, stopped short of demanding his resignation or dismissal. But the latest information we have is that his position as the men's head coach is safer. And he is, for instance, expected later this week, I think on Friday, to name his squad for Euro qualifiers Spain have next month against Georgia and Cyprus.
Carve Solocol, our chief reporter, thank you very much. Right, let's get more on this. Let's head straight to Madrid. Semra Hunter waiting to speak to us. Semra, very good evening. What's your immediate reaction to the news about Jorge Vilda?
It doesn't come as a surprise. I mean, people have been asking for his head along with Rubiales for a long time now. And not just him, but Luis de la Fuente, who is the head coach of the men's national team, and pretty much everyone else at the federation who supports Rubiales. People here in society are very upset and very angry with the whole way this thing has played out. And they have been asking repeatedly, demanding rather, that there be a proper clear out. So a whole new restructuring can be put into place. A whole proper organization can be put into place with people who will actually look after the well-being of these women, who will care about women's football, who will care about their values and equality, etc. And so it really doesn't come as a surprise that I think now, given the whole situation that's been going on, the fact that Rubiales has lost so many people in his corner and so many have turned their backs on him, Vilda, as you rightly say, is also very isolated now in this whole situation. And I'm not sure that he has enough really credit in the bank to kind of save his job at this point in time. And I think they understand that wider society is more supportive by far of these women, of Jenny Hermoso, and of a team that currently they don't have, than of a coach who is on his own without a coaching staff. Then quite frankly, the right move would be, if they are going to actually follow through with their words, where they speak about a whole new restructuring and a whole new era and a change, etc., which was in that statement that they put out last night, if they're actually going to follow through with those words, with actions, then I think the right course of action in this particular case, given everything that's going on, probably would be to sack the manager.
Okay.
The head coach, sorry.
Yeah, okay. Let's talk Rubiales now. Do you expect that we'll hear from him, given the latest developments?
Ooh. I think that's anyone's guess at this point in time, if I'm really honest with you, because I imagine there's probably a scenario where he is waiting to see what happens He's obviously suspended for 90 days provisionally. There's two court cases going on right now in parallel. One is at the administrative courts, where they are looking over the evidence that's put forward. They actually convened yesterday. They asked for more paperwork and more documentation before they decide to make some kind of decision as to his future, whether they will either suspend him, ban him, or maybe even let him keep his post, which I don't think is going to be the case. You have the criminal proceedings that's going on as well, and a completely separate court. So he might just be kind of weighing up his options right now and saying, right, so I have two choices. One is I can step down at this point in time and just end this whole saga and everyone can start to move on from it. Or he can continue to double down as he has been doing so fervently up until now and say, no, I'm going to fight this tooth and nail until the bitter end. I'm going to wait and see what the decision is of the courts and see if, in fact, they do push me out, because I think it is worth reminding people that at this stage, the Federation actually cannot sack Rubiales because they've given that power over to the government itself. They are now the only ones who can do so. I think that's kind of where we're at right now with him. But then again, there have been so many twists and turns to the story already. Is his mother going to play a factor in all of this, considering she's now spoken out recently and said that she's willing to die for justice for this cause because she feels that her son is a decent man and he's done nothing wrong? So is he worried about his mother's well-being? I think there's so many different elements and moving parts right now. It's a little difficult to actually really know what's going on in his head and ultimately see what it is that he's going to do. I think it's pretty much anyone's guess right now, but really the two options are either he resigns or he waits and fights it.
Indeed, Semra, it is an extraordinary story. You touched on this earlier about the reaction of the Spanish public. Are you surprised that the public is behind the female players and not the hierarchy?
No, not at all. And I think part of it has to do with how these women have been speaking out for many, many years about the treatment that they've been receiving within the Federation and the way that they've been treated by the coaching staff. This is not something new. There are precedents here. Back in 2015, for example, at the time, the group of players that were representing Spain, they were speaking about a culture of abuse, a culture of control, manipulation. They felt very uncomfortable, very unsafe to go and work and represent the Spanish national team. They came together, they wrote a letter to the Federation asking for the coach to be removed, which did eventually happen, but it happened because of media and societal pressure. And we're seeing something kind of similar happening again now. We have to remember last year when the players were again sending a letter to the Federation saying we're very concerned about our mental and emotional well-being as it relates to this coach, the coaching staff, their methodologies, and things beyond that, the setup and the structure. But the way that they handled it, people were so ashamed and so embarrassed by the way the Federation was treating these women, how they made it so public, how they humiliated them, how they treated them like little girls, how they said, you can't come back and represent Spain unless you apologize. And it was almost this tone of resentment in the way that they wrote the statement that I think people are a little bit fed up of what's been going on for all this time. And now finally has come an opportunity where you can be called to action. And they say, right, enough is enough. We have to do something about this. And of course, this is something that can then spill over into other facets of Spanish society as well.
Semra, given all those factors, how incredible is it that Spain actually won the World Cup?
I personally find it rather mind-blowing because with everything that's been going on behind the scenes, the fact that there was so much division, even amongst the players themselves, let's remember that there were players who they preferred to defend their values and the morals, and they said, no matter what, I am not going back to Spain until there is a proper change within the structure and the organization, the institution. Then there were those who asked to come back, but Jorge Vilda said, no, sorry, you can't come. Out of the 8 that asked to come back, he only took 3. And then there were the new players that he brought to the World Cup. So there were almost like 3 separate groups of these players. And a lot of them reportedly were also having issues amongst themselves because of this. It was causing a lot of contention in terms of, well, should you go, should you not, should you defend your rights, your morals, et cetera, and it was causing a lot of controversy almost within the group itself, separate to already the battles they were having with the Federation. So how they've managed to put the elephant in the room aside and kind of look past and beyond all of this and have such a strong sense of mental focus and mental toughness to say, let's prove our self-worth here. Let's go the distance. Let's win this thing together, united, for ourselves and for all those women in the previous generations who helped us to get here, who laid those foundations in the first place. I think it's so incredibly remarkable. And I'm genuinely stunned and astonished that they did it. And not just the fact that they did it, but they did it playing some really beautiful football across the tournament. And I think, I don't want to sound like I'm biased here, but I genuinely do think that they were probably on balance, at the very least, the most consistent team at the tournament. And I do think they were probably the best the best team in the tournament overall.
Semra, even though they beat England, we salute them. Thank you very much for joining us this evening.
My pleasure as always. Thanks, guys.